In 2024, we are going to be covering all bases with content and head-to-head strategy. Head-to-head dedicated videos are something that I haven't been able to provide at this point. But in 2024, that's going to change. And each week I'll be having a head-to-head dedicated video based on obviously results and sort of strategy each and every week, along with that buy, hold, and sell. Just to really keep you guys on track, especially if you are just playing head-to-head as a focus. There are a lot of people out there that are here to beat their mates. And this is where this type of strategy just differs a little bit from that of overall, because there's plenty through the middle. There's obviously a few different things at the start and sort of basing around which type of guns to select as well. That could be a little bit different to that of overall, depending on how many of these rounds that they miss during bye season. Are they going to miss a couple in a row? If they are an Origin player, are they going to not back up? These types of things are really, really important with your head-to-head strategy, because it's more likely that you'll be keeping a hold of some of these Origin guys and the like there. So as I said, each and every week we'll be going through a head-to-head strategy there, and I will be back making a head-to-head solely squad only, and I'd love to beat all of you guys as well. So if you have a head-to-head comp that you'd like me to join, would be happy to oblige, and anyone in my community, I'd be happy to jump in and do that. But let's get into some clear head-to-head strategy. And as I said, it doesn't differ too much to overall, but it does in a certain few aspects. So there are 22 rounds of scoring there will be for most of your leagues. If you have your grand final ending in round 26, and you can set that up, and all of my grand finals that only the head-to-head comps that I set up are going to be finishing there. So it's 22 rounds of scoring with 21 trading rounds before that 4-week final series, which is going to end in round 26 there. So keeping that in mind, you want to leave a sort of a minimum of 6 to 8 trades for that final 4 rounds. So if you can have sort of closer to a round for those 4, especially if you're looking to make the grand final, that's going to be super important for you. So with the fact that you get given 8 of your 44 trades in round 20, really, if you can hold all of those trades all the way through until those final 4, so round 23 onwards, 23, 24, 25, and 26, that means you should keep a few in the bank beforehand and not be at 0 during that time. A lot of overall players will be at 0 in that time, but as a head-to-head player, you really need to be at a minimum 3, hopefully sort of 6 or 7 left heading into round 20 when you get given those extra 8. And what that's going to allow you to do is make sure that you have as good of a team as possible for when it counts. And that's in the finals of your head-to-head squads there. So big importance there is obviously the amount of trades that you then would have to get close to that final 17, 18, 19 guns when you're getting into that final series. So the good thing there is that you get to use sort of round 20, 21, 22 to set yourself up for those round 23 in NRLs, in the NRL draw sense, but your first final is going to be in that round 23. So gives you 30 to 32 trades there for the most part to use in 19 rounds. So a little bit under 2 per round, which shows that how important it is to start well and to start with a few final team guns. And what I mean by that, guys, is if you have a few of those Origin guys that you like, no matter what, unless they get injured, I'm going to hold them for the entirety of the year. They will be in your squad already, and you only have to sort things out around that, get the correct cash cows, get the correct mid-ranges, and trade accordingly to get up to as many guns as possible for the end of the year. So as I mentioned with those Origin guys, if you focus on Origin guys that are not playing, so they have a bye in round 13, 16, and 19, hopefully 2 of those rounds, that means that they're going to be playing in the majority of your head-to-head matchups. And if they happen to have a bye in round 14 and around 20, and then maybe one at the start of the year, those types of players, if they're in Origin, are not going to be too great for your side because you're missing them for too many of your head-to-head matchups there. So with that number 3 point is 3 non-scoring rounds of 13, 16, and 19. Most comps, and all of my comps, will be non-scoring, non-matchup based in those rounds, those big major buy rounds, so you can have a week off. And the only time you would trade is if you've got a player that is going to decrease too much in value in that week when you're not actually needing them as a scorer. So they might have a concussion affected game, and then they're back the next game and they're likely to lose sort of 40 or 50k. Then that's something where if you don't consider them as someone that's going to make some money in the future, or they're going to be a gun in your side, then that would be a good time only to trade them out. And then if there's a great cash cow that pops up, So even if you don't have a matchup that round, getting that great cash cow to get some cash generation is going to be super important for your side. Number 4 there, so trying to start with sort of 5 to 6 guns, and what we're looking at there is pretty close to 1 gun in each position. So there might be a position there where you're looking at starting with 2 if you feel like there's plenty of value in one position, be it the wing fullback position, which might have some sort of mid-range guys that could turn into keepers, or it's the center position you don't want to start too heavy on, and there's some cash cows in there, then that could be a way to not start with 1 in that position and maybe focusing on a couple in another instead. So the goal with that then is to never trade them out except for injuries for 3 to 4 weeks. And those guns that you're focusing on, if they, as I said, can play, have a buy in 13, 16, or 19, one of them, 2 would be even better, then that would be the perfect gun for you to start with. Number 5 there, focus on top keepers who have buys in 13, 16, and 19, which we spoke about. Moving on from there, I forgot I wrote that in that one. Number 6, if you pick a good starting team, it should be looking to gain 750K to $1 million just from your starting team. So if you're looking at a few of those slightly underpriced keepers, so they might be sort of 50K or so underpriced, you're probably going to have 2 to 4 cash cows that might make you 200K plus. You might have a few guys that lose some money for you, and you have a couple of guys that only make you a tiny bit in your mid-range before you move them on to a better cash cow. So putting all that into account, it should be somewhere between that 750 to $1 million. $1 million if you do really well, 750 if you only do okay. Your goal is going to be is 15 million for your salary cap. So we started a $10 million salary cap. I did see guys that played head-to-head only that got into the 16 millions, and that was obviously really helpful for them come finals time. But then you need obviously a bit of luck from there. It's not all about the salary cap, but it definitely helps you to get as many of those good players as possible. I've also seen a lot of decent head-to-head teams with 14.5 to sort of 15 million there. So that anywhere in that range, 14.5 to 16, means you should do pretty solid in your head-to-head matchups. What this means, guys, is that each trade is worth approximately 100K. So when you've got 44 trades, let's say a host of them are going to be for injuries, you make $1 million there, then you can get fairly close to that $15 million mark with that 44 trades that you have up your sleeve. So really, as we said, a few of those guys are going to do much better than that in the Cartwrights and Prestons when you're looking at sort of 300K, 400K plus that you can make from them. And then some will be like 20K, 50K, 100K. Some will lose money as well. So put that into effect, and then you should be able to get close to that 100K per trade in that one there. So you got those guys, all those guns that make a few $100,000, which are those guys. This allows you to have 18 to 19 guns with a couple of loopers in your side as cash outs. So you bring them in right near the end. Maybe the last buy, the last minor buy round or something like that would be around 20, or potentially there's some cash outs that have a buy in that last sort of 4 rounds for you that you could loop to make sure that you use that 18 or 19 gun plays in your squad. And then from that point, you will have nobody in your league to be able to catch up to you because your salary cap's too high. You have more guns than they do, and you have some loopers to be able to make sure you get the correct guns in your starting playing 17. Number 7. So you look to have about 15 guns by the start of round 20, but pretty much have the exact value, team value or cash in the bank to be able to trade to the 17, 18 guns. So you might have sort of 3 or 4 mid-rangers at that time, and you can downgrade 1 or 2 of them to cash outs and upgrade the other 2 to get you to that sort of 17, 18, 19 guns, depending on how well your team value is set up. So if team value is about 14.5, then you might be able to get 17 guns. If it's 15, you have 18 guns, and then if it's over 15, you might be able to get to 19 guns. So that's how it's going to play. So it gives you 20 rounds there across the season from round 1 to gain an extra sort of 10 to 12 guns on your starting side, where we said you'd have sort of 5 to 6 in that scenario there. So that gives you up to sort of 17 to 19 pretty comfortably, give or take 1. So what you need to be throughout the season is very disciplined with your trades. You're not looking to trade guns. You're milking cows when they are ready. So the cash cows there, if they make sort of a couple $100K and you think their roll's kind of stopped, then you move them on to another good cash cow. And really, the biggest one there is you don't miss the good ones. So if a guy comes out, does really well, and you're like, oh, but the points over here, get that cash cow first, because he's likely to score pretty well. Maybe not as good as that gun that you could pick up in that week, but the cash cow is going to be more important than grabbing that gun first, because if you can build up that team value, then life gets very, very easy. Number 8 there, don't go for cash grabs or short-term points unless you're well behind in your league. So you'll see this sometimes in overall that guys will be playing 3 games, chance to make sort of 70 to 100k, but they might just be a good scorer as well for those 3 games. So in overall, that could really help you, the scoring points, plus also the short cash grab. Just because there are times, obviously, through the middle of the year where we look to target a certain buy round where if you can get that guy in for that round, it gives you another scorer, makes you a bit of cash, and it could be worth it. But for you in head-to-head, the trades that you hold are much more important than that short cash grab or the short-term points that you could get. So trades are only for trading out underperforming or peak players, for players who are clearly going to make money or they are a gun. No compromising on that. So points are good sometimes, but if you are making money, if you are building up that value, if you are getting decent mid-rangers and keepers in, then you are likely to be winning your head-to-heads anyway. So don't compromise on that. Number 9, loopers are very important. It could really be the difference between you winning or losing a head-to-head matchup. So, in that first round, it might be if there are a Tigers player or two that you're like, okay, I think they're going to get the good roll. I could potentially loop them in that first round and I can get a good head-to-head win when teams are fairly similar, then that could be cool. And obviously loopers throughout the entirety of the season. If you have 1 or 2 players from each team, then that's obviously the ideal one. You have a couple of loopers each week and you still have 19 players, so a couple of players that you could loop with is going to be super important. So just don't discount how important loopers are in head-to-head matchups as well. Number 10, make sure you captain a top 2 player. You'll likely have them in your team all year. So definitely start with one of Hines and or Cleary. Both could be even better. If you can fit that in and there's lots of cash cows, then great, because then you can keep those guys for the entirety of the year. It might be him, a Hines or a Cleary and a Payne Haas. So then when one of them has the bye, you have the second or third best scorer that can be your captain, because it's very important in a head-to-head matchup that you get the right captain. If the player you're up against has Cleary and you just have Haas and has to get 60 and Cleary gets 100 in that game, then you're well behind in that head-to-head matchup. So something to think about there for sure. Number 11, having an idea of who your opponent will captain or likely trade in can be important in later rounds. So if you know the guy, if you can get some information out of him, that can be pretty important in that one, because especially in those later rounds, if you are looking to catch up some wins, you might have to take a little bit more of a risk. So if you know who they're going to captain, likely generally what they're about to score and kind of if they've got a better team or not than you, then you can make some decisions according to that. You could be facing an easier matchup one week, so you likely go for a cash cow instead of that gun because you think you're going to win anyway, or you're a high chance of winning anyway. So you do have to play the percentages sometimes. So that could be the way to think of that as well. Is just literally playing your head-to-head and seeing what they've got from the previous weeks, what trades they're likely to make, and do they have many trades left? And all these questions come in. You do need to play your opponent rather than with overall, you're playing yourself and just making sure your team scores as much as possible. Whereas in that, you could get a harder matchup and you really need to win that. So you might push for that extra gun or 2 in that week. And then the other one, you might go for the cash cows. But ultimately, guys, don't let your mates win. Seriously, that's the most important point there. There's nothing worse than them gloating about winning your head-to-head matchup or winning the entirety of the comp. It just sucks. So get that right. Message me, guys, if you want me in your head-to-head comps. If you're in any paid ones as well, I'm happy to join those. I will be having a serious crack at head-to-head and showing you all how it's done, hopefully, as well as an overall team as well. So thanks for being here for the head-to-head one here. I hope you had a great Christmas and you have an absolutely awesome New Year's there.